This first claimation is a demonstration of the G protein signaling pathway. This pathway starts off with a signal molecule coming and attaching to the G protein coupled receptor. This ignites the whole process. The inactive G protein, which has GDP on it, comes and attaches to the signal receptor after the signal molecule is attached. The GDP on this protein is then replaced with GTP, and the G protein is now active. This G protein then goes and attaches to a protein kinase, and it drops off that phosphate it has from the GTP. The G protein then becomes inactive, but the protein kinase takes this phosphate and drops it off at another protein kinase. Then this protein kinase takes the phosphate which it received from the other one and takes it to a third protein kinase. This protein kinase then takes the phosphate and drops it off in an inactive enzyme. Once the enzyme receives this phosphate, it becomes active and it triggers a cellular response from the cell. This next pathway is the tyrosine kinase signaling pathway. This pathway starts out with two signaling molecules coming and attaching to two tyrosine kinase receptors. After they attach, the two separate receptors come together and form what is called a dimer. ATP is attached to this dimer, and the ATP places phosphates on each of the 6 tyrosines. After these phosphates are placed, relay proteins come and they pick up the phosphates and carry them to protein kinases. These kinases pass them on to another kinase and another kinase, and the final kinase takes it to an inactive enzyme and places the phosphate in there, which triggers a cellular response. This again opens up an ion channel, which releases calcium ions into the bloodstream. This final claimation is a representation of our chosen disease, type 2 diabetes. This process starts off with the signal molecule, insulin, coming and attaching to an insulin receptor. After the receptor is activated, a bunch of ATP come and attach to the bottom of the receptor, but they leave only the phosphate heads. After this happens, a protein kinase comes and slowly picks up one of the phosphates, and then it becomes activated. It then takes this phosphate and it moves towards the next protein kinase, where it drops that off in the next protein kinase and it activates that one. After that protein kinase is activated, it carries it to a third protein kinase, which then becomes activated. But instead of taking it to another protein kinase, this kinase drops it off into an inactive enzyme. And once the phosphate head is dropped off, the enzyme becomes activated and it triggers the ion channel to open up, which releases a bunch of glucose into the bloodstream. Now, this is what's supposed to happen in a normal person's body, but a person with type 2 diabetes, this doesn't happen. For them, through one of three things could happen. Either the whole thing runs the way it's supposed to and the insulin receptor comes and attaches itself, but that's also the problem. It never leaves. So this cycle is pretty much in loop. Glucose is constantly being dumped into the bloodstream since that molecule is never leaving. The whole system is active. So this is where you get the high concentration of glucose in your bloodstream. The second thing that could happen is the body doesn't make enough insulin. So there's not that signal molecule come and activate the situation, which is where you could get the problem of not enough glucose going into your bloodstream. And you need to get that's why you need to get the insulin pump to pump up the glucose that goes into your bloodstream. And the third thing is that the body has some insulin resistance. So this means the body doesn't either let the insulin bind to its signal receptor or anything like that. And the glucose has trouble leaving the cell. And this is where you also get that deficiency of glucose into your bloodstream and in the cells. There are many signs and symptoms for type 2 diabetes, and they develop pretty slowly. So some of them are that you have increased thirst and frequent urination, you have increased hunger, and you start losing weight. You might get fatigued and have blurred vision due to all this, and you might even get frequent infections and areas of darkened skin. So these are all just signs and symptoms, and there is no actual cure for type 2 diabetes. They're working on some treatments, but as of right now, there's no official cure which will help you get rid of it. But some ways to just treat it yourself is to eat better, exercise more, and maintain a healthy weight for you.